The Interloper by J.E. Vinay. Narrated by the same. Chapter 1. 2 silver orbs shone brighter than the sun. They shone over the vastness of all eternity. 2 round balls of silver took up the skies and everything in it. This is all that Todd could see. These silver discs covered his eyes, and beyond them there was nothing else. He struggled to see if there was anything, but he was blind even to the blackness of his peripheral vision. "What's going on?" he asked himself. He struggled, but could do nothing. Tried to move his arms to take away the blinding silver from his eyes, but his arms wouldn't move, couldn't even feel them. It was as if his entire body were absent, not even the ghost feeling of a limb or the numbing, painful feeling of a body part that has been removed. He was incomplete, vision clouded by gigantic silver circles. He tried to remember how he got there, but everything was blank. "What is this?" he asked to no one. Todd had no recollection of anything, no memories, not even the most cherished childhood ones that you could never forget. For him, there was nothing but those 2 bright silver discs hanging front row center in his realm of existence. He waited patiently. Because he had no memories, he also felt no reason to fear. Nothing to tell him of what was evil, what is harmful. He was calm, detached. He felt the most at rest anyone could ever feel. He waited, sitting in this light, for some time that seemed to last an eternity. But when it finally ended, it felt like it only lasted an instant. The lights disappeared. The coins were gone. Yes, that's what they were. Coins. Silver coins. Todd's eyes opened, and he could see a dull gray sky. He was lying on his back. He could feel his body for the first time, it seemed. He couldn't remember feeling it before. He knew the feeling, though. Very familiar. But very new. So he must have had a body before, but was this one his? What was his body like, anyway? Todd sat up and looked at his hands. He was very surprised to see that he couldn't see them, not at all. But then a moment later they were there, a pale blur, 5 fingers on each hand, and that's all he could tell. Everything's all blurry, he thought. But was everything blurry? Was it really? Todd looked out past the blur of his hands and saw gray, cloudy skies. They stretched out and met a horizon of water, and water alone. There was no land in sight, and to Todd, right now, there was no such thing. The sea was wide and vast. Its color was darker than the skies. It was all very real, more real than himself. The vividness of the world around him seemed to mock his own pale, blurry existence. Fading slowly into his consciousness came his immediate surroundings. Todd got to his knees and gazed inward from the horizon of the water. A dark haze around his sides gained a wood-like texture, a blackened wood. It pointed in a triangle upward to the horizon. It was a boat, a small canoe that Todd sat at the bow of. Just as Todd was beginning to see his surroundings, he was also beginning to feel and hear them. There was a soft wind blowing in his face, and the water was moving. No, he was moving through the water. There were splashes behind him. Todd turned about to look, and there before him was a man, as clear as the sky and seas, not blurry like Todd. His arms were enormous. His hands held a firm grip on 2 dark wood oars. He was rowing. "What is this?" Todd asked, as if he were a child placed in the back seat of a minivan with no cares but only nagging query as to his current situation. The rower's ageless face just stared silently back at him. "Where are we going?" Todd asked again. "Where they all go," the man replied dryly. He was accustomed to people asking him so many questions, and frankly he was bored with it. He had done this millions of times, picking up those that called to him with the silver and bringing them back. You paid the toll. Todd looked back at his hands. They were becoming clear. He could see the creases in his skin and the shapes of his nails. Todd was beginning to see his own body now, but why hadn't he seen it before? He looked off to the side of the boat to see his reflection. No good, just a blur. "Why is it so hard for you?" the rower asked. Todd looked around again. A dark sky, a dark sea, a dark boat, and a timeless-looking man rowing him through the water to a place he only knew as the place they all go. At least that's what the rower had said. But what had he meant? Was it where everyone goes? Or was it just where this rower takes everyone he rows? "Who are you?" Todd asked. "I am the boatman," the rowing man replied. "Most people recognize me right away. What happened to you?" Todd looked down at his legs. They too were becoming clear. He was wearing black boots and blue jeans. "I don't know," he replied. "I don't know anything." "You seem like you've already drank from the river," the boatman said, jokingly, followed by a short huff of a laugh. Todd didn't understand what the boatman was saying. He didn't understand his situation. He couldn't remember who he was, just his name. "I'm Todd," he said. "Well, at least you remember your name, but I still can't see your face." The boatman made his conversation with only little interest in his fare, continuously rowing at the same steady rate that he seemed to do for ages. Todd looked back over his blurry reflection. "You mean you can't see me either?" "I see what you bring with you," the boatman replied, "and I can see that you really do have no idea what's going on, or what's happened to you." He huffed again. Todd wasn't really listening. He was preoccupied watching his reflection and trying to figure out why his mind was completely blank. This place we're going, what is it exactly? The boatman stopped his rowing. This fare was peculiar to him indeed. He set his oars up inside the boat and flexed his hands. He looked back at Todd, looked back at him with his ageless face. After taking only a moment's rest, the boatman took up his oars and began his rowing once more. He said in reply, "We're going to the underworld." Time didn't seem to matter to the boatman. He didn't need to stop his rowing. In fact, in all the centuries before, he never seemed to stop at his rowing. He had rowed for thousands of years, brought all his fares to the same place, but they all knew at least a piece of knowledge to where they ventured. And if not, then they were full of fear and doubt. This Todd was different to him. He paused, it seemed for the first time in centuries, to get his mind around this oddity, yet decided to handle the situation with what he did best. "You're not like the others," the boatman said. Todd was still thinking hard and long, but there was nothing. He tried to remember something of how he got there, of who he was. His memories only began with the sight of those silver coins. It was that vision and a feeling, a sense of purpose. But what was it? Todd couldn't place his mind on it. The boatman had said they were going to the underworld. What's this underworld? Todd thought. It didn't sound nice. The name sounded dark. Todd felt like he could make no choices. There were no options given to him, but yet he didn't mind, mostly because he was unaware of his limitations to begin with. And now he was going to the underworld, a dark place. It gave him a bad feeling. "What did you say?" he asked. "You're not like the others," the boatman said again. "I usually never bother talking to most of them. They usually know where they are going, and they know how they got there. Some have some troubles at first. They experience denial, and some just can't remember. But as I continue to row, it comes back to them, and they make their decision. But you're different." The boatman stopped his rowing again. He looked at Todd. Todd looked back at him. He felt anxious now. Something was going to happen, something important, something other than darkness and rowing. Todd wasn't afraid. He felt drawn or called. There was a purpose or task for him to fulfill somewhere. As the boatman stared at Todd, he saw this, but nothing more. "You're a strange one," remarked the boatman. "I'm starting to think you don't even belong in this world." "Why did you stop rowing?" Todd asked. The boatman continued staring at Todd, reading his thoughts and watching his memories, but there was nothing but that silly feeling of purpose. "There's no point," the boatman said. "Rowing has a purpose too, you know." He stared at Todd. Todd was clueless. "I don't understand." "Well, you paid your toll. I don't know what else to do with you but bring you to your destination." The boatman paused for a moment and breathed slowly. "So be it." He grabbed his oars once again. "Close your eyes," he instructed. Todd did so. "So be it," he said again, and not a moment later the boatman continued. "We're there."